by SuSanA, and it's co-convened by the Women for Water Partnership, the African Women Sanitation Professional Network, the Community of Women in Water, Women in Water Diplomacy, the Women in Water and Sanitation Network, the African Water Association, and also in this session it's Just Water Jobs, AFWA, the University of Technology Sydney, and Equal Aqua by the World Bank. Before I start, some informations. This session will be recorded. If you are comfortable, we have to ask you to leave the session. The recording will be available afterwards. We will not record the Q&A, only the presentation part. If you're not speaking, please turn off your microphone. And if you have questions, post them in the chat. We will moderate them in the Q&A. With that, I would like to start with a video that explains much more than I could say in an introduction. Please.
To meet the water and sanitation crisis head-on, water institutions need to modernize and attract a talented workforce with a diverse skill set. This including women. Companies with more gender diversity on executive teams have found to be up to 21% more likely to outperform on profitability. Greater gender diversity has also been linked to more user-friendly design and improved customer service. Yet, on average, only 18% of staff in water utilities are women. So why are women absent from the water sector? Broadly speaking, women face multiple barriers in 4 key career stages: attraction to the sector, recruitment, retention, and advancement. To begin with, women are often discouraged from pursuing studies and careers in technical areas. Only 38% of tertiary graduates from STEM fields around the world are women. Then, to join the sector, women face many bottlenecks, including biases in the recruitment process. A study found that only an average of 20% of staff hired at water utilities are women. It's hard for women employed by water institutions to stay in the sector, due to issues such as a lack of family-friendly policies and unsupportive work environments. For such reasons, women engineers left water utilities at almost double the rate between 2018 and 2019. Finally, women face many challenges to advance their careers, including less access to training and networking opportunities. Only around 23% of utility managers are women. The good news is there are many actions water institutions can adopt to address these barriers. Water companies can organize career talks, outreach programs, or loans and scholarships for women pursuing studies in STEM fields. They can adopt competency-based hiring or blind recruitment processes to address unconscious bias among hiring panels. They can also promote a respectful and offer flexible work arrangements, or support women's career advancement by increasing access to leadership and technical training. As you can see, small investments to address barriers faced by women can help improve inclusion in the sector. As modern water institutions face increasing demands for water services, drawing on available female talent is not just the right thing to do, it is also the smart thing to do.
Thank you also, Gaia, for being part of the group making this video. I think it's very important to speak about this today, because when we talk about the water crisis and the problems by achieving SDG 6, it's always governance, it's money, it's investment, but we rarely talk about the fact that we need people to actually do the water work on all levels, from very basic plumbing to very complex utility management, governance, etc., etc. So I'm very happy to have this amazing group of speakers today with me to give us some ideas, recommendations, findings, and general wisdom on the aspect of women in water jobs. First, we have a piece on recruitment by Josh Newton from Just Water Jobs. Then we look into retainment and advancement by Leticia Ackun, gender specialist from AFWA. Juliet Willetts and Avni Kumar from the Institute for Sustainable Futures will speak about their research results from the last years. And we will close the presentations with a presentation from Gaia Hatzfeld from the World Bank, inclusion specialist at Equal Aqua. We will then have a session of Q&A, so prepare your questions. And with that, I would like to start addressing Josh. You run the Josh Water Jobs website and mailing list with hundreds and hundreds of water jobs. What's your experience? What can you recommend in terms of recruitment to make the water workforce more diverse?
Great. Thank you very much, Maren, for having me here. And yeah, I mean, to start just with other stats, we saw the 18% stat, but worldwide only 40% of women work versus 72% of women, so men. So that's a 25% difference, but in many countries that's up to 50%. And WEF, the World Economic Forum, did a global gender gap study where it says that it'll take 170 years to achieve gender equality in terms of those numbers. Men apply to positions that they only meet 60% of the qualifications, according to a study. In women, it's around 100%. So this is something that organizations have to take into consideration when making their job descriptions and their advertisements. And then only 38% of job ads are actually gender neutral in terms of the terminology and language that they use. And this is probably much worse actually in other parts of the world. So just to start, for organizations to have an understanding of where women are coming from when they apply, is that the role of gender does play a role in how candidates present themselves when they're applying to jobs. That men and women describe success differently, and that women often frame their success in terms of groups rather than as an individual. For men, it's easier to state ambition than women. Obviously, these are generalizations, but there are exceptions to all of them. But generally speaking, it's easier for men to state their ambitions than women. It's important to understand that gender can dictate the extent to which people will negotiate salary and other benefits. And then also that with both education and career, a woman's path might not be as linear as a man's path. And this might be because they have to support financially or support family life. And then also that the time that it even takes to do a degree, an educational degree, doesn't tell the whole story. And that all of this does not mean that women are less suitable than men for jobs. So to start with just the job advert, because that's where, when we're looking at jobs, when candidates are looking at jobs, that's where things begin. And language is one that's been one of the more talked about aspects of job descriptions in recently. And that starts with the job title itself. In the water and sanitation sector, we don't have too many jobs that end with man, like foreman or policeman. But in the case, it should be person instead of man. But then a recent trend in many parts of the world is to use such names such as rock star or water ninja or guru. And these are very male-dominated workplace titles. So these should be avoided to have women be more at ease in applying for positions. And then there's just language in general throughout the job advertisement. And there's two wonderful platforms. One is called the Gender Decoder, and there's another one called Textio. In Gender Decoder, you actually can copy paste your job advert into a website, and it'll tell you which words in your job description are gendered, that show gender bias, because there are different, this same website differentiated in a study between masculine and feminine words used in job descriptions. And so it's important to avoid masculine words like dominate and strong, confident, superior. Those types of things are turn off women to applying. And then it's also important to avoid gendered pronouns, he or she. It should more inclusive would be to have you or they. And then also just important to avoid jargon, because that also can be very exclusionary when you're talking about applying to jobs. In terms of the content itself of job advertisements, it's suggested these days to avoid the word requirements, because we all know that this is more of a wish list that is often not achievable. If we go back to the stat of women only apply to jobs if they 100% meet requirements, then the longer that list is, the more complicated it is. Even if these are not absolutely necessary for the job, it dissuades women from applying to positions. So a shorter list of qualifications is a good practice. And it's not about requirements. It's like frame it more as what you'll do or what makes you a great candidate, rather than having that stringent language in there. And then it's about eliminating the tasks that are not essential for the job function, because that will, the more that it is in there, the more it'll dissuade women from applying. And even if you want to put something more like you really must have, it's important to differentiate what you should have in a category and then what's nice to have. That's not a requirement, but let it be known that those are not nice to have, but wouldn't eliminate you from qualification. Also, don't hire for something that can be easily trained on, and generalize where transferable skills would be acceptable. It's important in job advertisements to encourage all to apply, even if underqualified for positions, because often people, and again, going back to this 100%, people, especially women, take themselves out of the running even before applying because of they don't think they're qualified. So encourage those who are underqualified to apply, because people, and let it be known that you don't have to meet every qualification in a job advertisement. Just in terms of entry level as well, entry level should mean entry level. It shouldn't require 3 years of experience to get an entry level job, and that on the job training will be provided. And then to recognize other types of experience. So we're talking, if you work in a store, or if you worked at a school club or internships, that those are recognized as well. And then in the advert itself, it's important to state the commitment to equal and a diverse workplace, to convey that you take that seriously. So in the hiring process itself, so there's another statistic that when the hiring manager is male, they only select a woman 40% of the time. So it's important to have diversity in your hiring managers, and also to provide inclusivity training for on recruitment for hiring managers. It's also important to diversify the interviewers or the interview panel, to have both men and women. And it's recommended always have two, and to mix those who are in those positions. And this is a good indication of the organization's shows that its importance in diversity as well. And it's important to ensure a gender diverse applicant pool. So even with Josh's daughter jobs and the few hires that we have done, it's 50-50 gender, male, female, short list, or in some cases long list. And that when that doesn't occur, that you work hard to make sure, in addition to achieve that 50-50 balance when having a long list or a short list. So it's more equal in that regard. And then also standardized interviews, that everybody gets the same questions, and that again, this idea that gender plays a role is in mindset when creating these questions for the interview. And then just the last kind of piece to as part of a job advertisement, which is part of, and this will very much be linked to some of the other presentations, I'm sure, are the benefits that are offered and the workplace environment. So parental leave for both parents, not just for the mother. And then also linked to that, which it's not as frequent, is an ease back into work post maternity, so that for a certain amount of time after maternity leave ends, that the mother can come back at 50% time. So embed some flexibility in terms of returning to work, because we know how difficult that is. Childcare allowance, flexible working hours. We've seen this especially with COVID. Remote work opportunities. It's shown that women apply to remote work jobs 5% more than men do, and because of the options for flexibility. Mental health and wellness programs, paid sick leave, and then obviously, equal pay, equal opportunities for promotion, mentorship, to offer that. I mean, this is something wider that the community and you all are working on very much. And what this is all about too is mentorship, and that there's a because of lack of leadership positions for women, there's a lack of role models. So how do we facilitate mentorship, so in the workplace and beyond? And then so I think that is about it for this. I am sure the other speakers have other additions to this aspect of the process of hiring as well. But again, thank you very much, and look forward to hearing everybody else's talks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Josh. That was really interesting. I learned a lot, and I'm very looking forward to get some of that somewhere sometimes written down, because that's a lot of knowledge in one head. Wow. So we would like to move on from here to the next step. If women entered a workplace, a utility, a water provider, a social entrepreneur, whatever, what does happen there? So with that, I would like to ask Dr. Leticia Ackun, our gender specialist from the African Water and Sanitation Association, to come to the virtual stage to present her work in AFWA. Leticia.
Thank you. Marin, will you share the presentation? Is it
Anna,
possible?
can you share the presentation? Oh, Yasha.
Thank you. Yeah, so what I'll say is I'm the gender specialist, as he said. Now we are the African Water and Sanitation Association. We used to be AFWA, now it's AFWASA. So what I'm going to discuss, I think Joshua has already said so much, so I'm going to skip a lot of the slides and then just focus. He talked about the global picture. For AFWA, we were also interested to know the African picture. So can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so my background, I'm going to talk briefly what AFWA does. The global situation has already been said, so I'll skip that. The African situation from the sampled results that we have had so far, and then the interventions and the way forward. Thank you. Next. Yeah, so as a brief background, the African Water and Sanitation Association is a professional association bringing together institutions, company operators in the water sector. So we bring utilities together. So all utility in Africa, most of them, I must say about 50 utilities are members of AFWA. And we pride ourselves as the leadership in capacity building of these people, bringing innovation and also trying to bring technology and see how our utilities are more of they are able to meet the current trend and ensure sustainability of their systems. So the problem lies within the low representation of women when it comes to our sector, because it's male dominated, as has already been said. And so we now want AFWA to be seen as a gender-sensitive organization. Hence, my employment. Before then, there was no gender specialist. So my role is to see how we are going to mainstream gender and ensure that we have more female in leadership position. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I think you can skip this. We know about the problems with attraction, recruitment, retention, and advancement. And also the global picture, which is indicating how many women are in the workforce, the percentage of engineers and with managers, and then even the fact that some utilities didn't even have any female engineer and only few managers. Next slide, please. Yeah, so when we are looking at retention, the question, this is data from the World Bank report, which I think all of us are familiar with, so I will not labor on it. So it's proven that for even the number of years that women and men have worked, there is a disparity in that. Next slide, please. And also, when we look at the exit rates, we realize that women are leaving more than the men. So it goes to confirm that we have more of the men being retained than the women. Next slide, please. Both for engineers and also managers. And also the rate of recruitment, that's another thing. How are women attracted to the sector? We find out that we have, when it comes to the science, technology, engineering and mathematics area, we have fewer women. So for the engineers, we have fewer women, managers, fewer women. Next slide, please. Yeah, so addressing the challenge, I think Josh has already mentioned the fact that we have to consider the work-life balance, family-friendly policies, fair wages, the work environment of the woman, how conducive is it for her to be able to thrive. And even there's also the issue of sexual harassment and also the work facilities. Some of the facilities are not gender friendly. The amenities are not gender friendly. Yeah, so the solution for AFWA with our membership was to undertake a baseline data on the gaps that lies within the wash sector with the utilities and also with other water operators and sanitation operators. And also, we hope that the findings that we come out with as an African story can help us address the issues. It's likely it's very close to what the global picture looks like, but we are interested to know the African side of the story. Please go ahead. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what did we do? We did the gender gap analysis and then form gender committees within our utilities. And then presently we are hoping that as we go forward, there will be the need to review policies and make sure that they mainstream gender into their policies and also to develop gender equality action plans. And then we'll ensure follow up on the supervisor implementation of those plans. Please go ahead. The next slide. Yeah, so far we did, we are yet to close the survey. So we keep on telling other people who have still not filled the survey. We sent it to over 50 utilities. So far we have responded. We have respondents from only 21, and we are hoping to reach at least 40. Then we close and start the analysis. But out of the result, what we have, I just sampled 5. So the results that you find here is more to do with the 5 utilities that I sampled. So it is not the total picture yet. I know definitely when we run the full survey, things will change. But it's also confirms whatever was said about the global picture, which is the fact that when it comes to the total number of staff in this utility, we had more than 50, more than 24, 76, about 76 being male and only 24 female. for the board members, we had only 1 out of 5 being female. For the executive officer, we also had only 1 out of the 5 being females. And then for deputy director, we had none of them, all of them were male. And then senior chief manager, we had only 26% being female. And for the managers, we had 24. Next, please. Yeah, and also when it comes to the administration level, we had 35 being female and 65 being male. And for engineers, we had only 16%, and technicians, we had only 10%. Please proceed. Yeah, so we use the rapid assessment appraiser, organizational assessment, which looks at the employee life cycle. So we were looking at issues to do with attraction and talent outreach, recruiting, onboarding, performance management, talent and leadership development, retention, and of employee engagement. We were looking at succession planning, promotion, separation and retirement, policies, company performance, reporting, corporate communication, and branding. So when we looked at if we focus on the retention, we had only 8.9% of them saying that the staff were being retained. Please, let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so we developed gender action plans, and then using the life cycle of the employee, like using the employee life cycle. So we looked at talent and leadership development, company policies. We had a vision, and then the targets, the actions that had to be taken. So engaging top management was a priority. Reviewing organizational policies was one thing that came up, and conducting organizational capacity audits, and also for policies, reviewing most of the HR manuals to include gender perspectives, developing a salary grade to revise job adverts, and ensure gender sensitivity in our adverts was also some of the issues that came up. Next, please.
You have 1 minute left.
Okay, yeah, so I think it goes also, we developed the gender action plan, and then also we, can you go to the next slide, please? So for the way forward, we are looking at disseminating this. So we will close the data. We are going to do the dissemination of the results with management of each utility for them to come up with the individual agenda action plans on how they are going to ensure that gender is mainstream in their policies and in their structures, and also to come up with training, capacity building for staff in the light of all these things, so that the organization itself understands gender. And then we identify gender focal persons to form gender committees in each of these utilities and develop the policies with the input of the head office, and then also develop monitoring indicators. Next. Yeah, so this is the advocacy. I think the next question will be how we hope to encourage management to see the need to retain staff. And these are the reasons. I think it's not lost to us. It's a survey that has been done already, indicating how women benefit from better jobs, and also how organizational outcomes are increased because of the involvement, diversity in decision making, where you have a lot of women, and the customer satisfaction, which also brings about the fact that women are on board. We have a lot of customer being satisfied with their service. So these are some of the things that we are going to use as advocacy to encourage these managers to see the need to mainstream gender and ensure that the women who are even employed, the fewer, are retained within the sector. Thank you very much. I think that's my last slide. Yeah, thank you. So if you want more information, you can contact either me or go to our website, afwazahq.org. www. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Leticia. Super interesting, because this is the real implementation of what we're talking about on a very large scale and to a very brief scale as well. So thank you for the insight. I'm very much looking forward to learn in the next years how this progresses. With that, I would like to go to research, because the Institute for Sustainable Futures did a lot on WASH implementation and women, but also on the whole aspect of jobs and women and WASH and sanitation. Unfortunately, it's already late at night, so we have it pre-recorded, but you can always reach out to Professor Juliet Willetts and Avni Kumar when they awake to their time zone fitting. So please start the pre-recorded presentation.
Hello, everybody. My name is Avni Kumar, and I'm a researcher at the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney in Australia. I'll be joined today by my colleague, Professor Juliet Willetts, who will be talking us through the second part of this presentation, which talks about closing the gender gap in the water sector and zooming in on the barriers that women tend to experience at the workplace and some strategies to help employers retain a more diverse workforce. Before starting, I would like to acknowledge that this research was a collaborative effort and included various partner organizations in Indonesia, Cambodia, and Australia, as well as the World Bank Equal Aqua Initiative. It was funded by the Australian government's Water for Women Fund. So why is this issue important? There are many reasons, and here I highlight a few key ones. Research shows that women occupy a smaller percentage of roles in the water utilities across the globe, comprising only 18% of the sector's paid workforce. Moreover, when present, they are found to be overrepresented in domains such as administration, customer relations, human resources, which are traditionally viewed as roles suitable for women, as opposed to field-based technical positions and leadership roles. Women are also more likely to leave the workforce at a higher rate than men in the water sector. The gap between the average tenures of men and women is particularly striking in technical positions such as engineers and managers, with women's tenures being much, much shorter. This stark underrepresentation of women in the sector's workforce is a hugely missed opportunity that is likely to lead to less than optimal performance of the sector. Because where women are present in decision-making, the decisions will better reflect the needs and preferences of the populations they serve. For example, women closely engage with water resources and thus have intimate knowledge of water quality and quantity issues, and they can represent an important force in advocating for some of these key changes needed to create the resilient communities that we all need going forward. The economic and business case is also very clear. Companies with gender diverse executive teams are 21% more likely to perform better on profitability. Other benefits also include better customer satisfaction, improved employee retention. Therefore, there is clear rationale for a diverse workforce. And yet, women consistently face barriers in numerous ways that reflect the power dynamics and norms in society. There is the constant juggle between work and domestic responsibilities, which is further worsened due to the inflexible organizational policies. There is the feeling of isolation in a traditionally male-dominated work environment. In such contexts, issues such as harassment, including sexual harassment, is often normalized and therefore underreported, as women are hesitant to further stand out in an already isolated work environment. There is the lack of basic facilities such as toilets, and other systemic barriers such as discriminatory laws related to maternity leave and low and unequal wages. And the list goes on. Therefore, the water sector has a strong responsibility to ensure women in the workforce have an opportunity to grow, develop, and progress to their fullest potential. With the objective of finding solutions to such barriers, We developed a guidance for water and sanitation organizations. It includes the following framework adapted from the World Bank Equal Aqua Initiative and follows the different stages of a career cycle. And here we will focus on the retention stage.
So greetings all. I'll continue on with a focus on approaches that we can use to retain a diverse workforce. So some of the different ways to do this is firstly to focus on having an equality, diversity and inclusion strategy that's agreed to at the highest level. Also to have policies and initiatives that help redistribute care responsibilities. Thirdly, to think about how both formal and informal networks of women water and sanitation professionals can support one another. And lastly, in the case of ensuring retention of people with a disability, having partnerships with disability employment services or organisations of people with disabilities. So I'll now give some examples of the first three of these, which have a core focus on gender equality. So taking the first of these, an equality, diversity and inclusion strategy is a really, really important starting point. And what's been found to be very important is having these strategies with leadership from the top of organisations, so from the executive level. And some examples of where it's been done include amongst water utilities through USAID's Engendering Utilities program. And for example, under that program, Sydney Water have developed an actual Inclusion and Diversity Council who provide advice and are made up of 10 staff who are very committed to inclusion and diversity in their workforce. Another example is the work done by the Diversity Council of Australia, who have developed resources that include ways to think of this as an organisational change process and how to handle those changes and bring different staff along so that you generate broad support for gender and inclusion. So moving on to the second area, which is about having policies and initiatives that help redistribute care responsibilities. So that can be done in very practical terms and also more with regards to social norms. So on the first to do with practical terms, that's about dealing with practical needs of people of different genders. And Malindi Water and Sewage Company is one amongst many others who are making sure that they provide lactation and nursing rooms to cater to the needs of female staff. And then if we take the social norms side, which is about how we think about women and men's roles, there's an example of the Argentine Water and Sanitation Company who have launched a kind of audio-visual campaign with different sets of language that help us think about norms differently. So, for example, they have "We do it together" as a slogan that helps people remember that tasks shouldn't fall, especially domestic tasks, shouldn't just fall to women, but they're things that should be done together. And another one that's even more, takes things a step further, is Change the Fairy Tale, which is about changing the ideas about whose role it is to take on certain tasks. So a third area is about formal and informal networks of women water and sanitation professionals. Now, this is something that's enormously important and can really support women to address the different challenges they might find in what might often be workplaces. And so various associations offer opportunities to support networking, such as the African Water Association, also the Association of Women in Water, Energy and Environment. And those associations provide ways for women to network with one another, but also to have mentoring relationships with more senior women and be supported through some of the challenging times that they might experience in their work and careers. So just a couple last initiatives to mention. We wanted to share how Melbourne Water has provided education and training to all their managers on unconscious bias and helping staff to realise what some of the ways they view the world and how that impacts the way they relate to other people in their work life. And another important example is an idea called reverse mentoring, which you may not have heard of. And that's where you can have junior staff, in this case women, partnered with senior staff members in a mentoring relationship, but one that works the opposite way around, and where the younger staff member provides advice and ideas to a more senior staff member, which can help open their minds to new ways of working and to how to provide a more inclusive workplace. So these and many other strategies can be found in a database that we've developed, which is an Excel database of more than 180 activities. It includes many that are focused on this category of retention and how to retain diverse staff. And there's also a guidance document which helps point to some of the issues and common issues and challenges and how they can be overcome. And so if you'd like to download that Excel database, please jump onto the QR code here or the website, and you will find there both the guidance document and the Excel database. And so thank you for the chance to share these ideas with you. I hope you're inspired, and I hope that the resources can serve you well to help retain diverse staff in your workforces. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to Juliet and Avni, even if they are not with us here today. But I think this was very interesting in terms also of different examples. And I really like the idea of the reverse mentoring. I think we could all learn a lot from each other if we switched roles sometimes. With that, I would like to ask Gaia Hatzfeld to the virtual stage. As a social inclusion specialist, we've heard a lot about Equal Aqua already. What do you see and want to add to what we've heard already from your experience with the topic for quite some time now? Please.
Thank you so much. Just a quick question. Are you seeing just the presentation, or are the notes there as well?
Just the presentation.
Perfect, how it should be. I mean, basically, I feel I have nothing else to add because I feel all the other presentations already covered most of these topics. There will be some repetition. I'll go over them more quickly if possible. But hopefully there'll be a little bit more kind of a focus on the specific tools and resources that might help take things further. So yeah, so I'm Gaia Hatzfeld. I'm part of the team that runs the Equal Aqua platform, which is hosted by the Water Global Practice at the World Bank. And it's really a pleasure to be here today. So I'll hear just quickly what we'll be covering in this presentation. So I'll give you a quick background on our work on gender diversity in water and on the Equal Aqua platform. I'll share some diagnostic tools and insights that we have from an updated Women in Water database, and also some other tools and resources that we have developed to expand diversity inclusion in water. And finally, I'll describe how to join Equal Aqua benchmarking and what benefits can be expected from joining. So the work began with the publication of this report on women in water utilities, breaking barriers. It was a mixed methods research which explored barriers as well as promising approaches on promoting female participation in the sector. In this report, we collected data from 64 water and sanitation utilities and conducted interviews and focus group discussions. And all of this showed that women are starkly underrepresented in the sector. And I'm sure this is of no surprise to anybody here. We already saw this in its earlier presentation as well, but so this is this framework that we developed as part of the research. And we found that by looking systematically at these 4 stages of the employee cycle, we could highlight in a very focused manner the key barriers that exist to diversity in these utilities. But also it showed very specific actions that we could take to attract, recruit, retain, and advance. And the presentations we heard earlier were great because these focus on what we had covered, but go into even further deeper detail than what we were able to do in our own report. So it would be great to have further conversations to also keep abreast on the most recent data and knowledge that exists. Again, this has also been covered, but just that we thought it was important to be able to make a case. It's not just as the video that we saw showed. It's not just important because it's the right thing to do to be gender diverse, but it's also actually a smart thing to do. So we found that having these arguments, especially in the work that we do with our client countries, it's actually very, very important data pieces to have to be able to say why it actually really matters. So then the findings from this report gave rise to Equal Aqua, because we saw that the research itself was useful to have an understanding of where things are, but we had to do something about it to take it forward. And also while putting the report together, we'd interacted with so many actors, so many who are also here now, and realized that we actually need to put this into action. So Equal Aqua partners include water utilities, private sector companies, international organizations, NGOs, and academia. We have 19 official Equal Aqua partners. They're mostly from the water supply and sanitation sector, but we are actually increasing our outreach and inclusion of water resource management institutions. So we have a growing number of river basin organizations and groundwater and irrigation institutions as they face the same issues. And we see kind of, we don't have enough data on them yet, but anecdotally, we know it's the same. Equal Aqua can be divided into these three broad categories. So the first is the platform, which what I just mentioned is where you have Equal Aqua partners that come together and form a community of practice. Together we have regular meetings, training opportunities, knowledge exchanges, and just discussions on what we can do to advance the gender diversity. We have the country engagement element in Equal Aqua, which is mainly for us internally, where we offer tools and technical advice to support the operationalization of diversity in specific operations that we work on with our clients. We also sometimes provide the same support to other operations outside of the World Bank. And then the third category is on evidence and benchmarking. And here, this is about collecting data on diversity in the water institutions, documenting good practices and effective interventions that exist. And to make all of this data publicly available, we have developed a comprehensive benchmarking database. And I'll be saying a little bit more on these in the next slides. So as we saw in the framework, before actually intervening or finding actions, the first step for developing these strategies and actions is to diagnose the challenge. And so for that specifically, we need tools. So we have developed several different diagnostic tools, but our key instrument for creating a baseline on gender diversity is the HR survey. So the first step that we do is to distribute the survey to utilities and institutions that we engage with. These surveys include questions around general HR information. So this is questions such as the total number of employees disaggregated by sex, or the total number of female managers, female engineers, female board members, etc. We have a set of questions around policies and programs, where we look at what kind of flexible or family-friendly arrangements they have, such as flexible work, maternity leave, etc. We have a set of questions on training opportunities. So we look whether there are mentoring programs available, whether leadership trainings or technical trainings are offered, and to whom. And then we have a set of questions on the work environment. So to see whether there are separate toilet facilities available for men and women, whether childcare is provided or supported, whether there are lactation rooms, etc. So once this information is received from the water institution, our team processes the data and generates a confidential scorecard, which is sent directly to the water institution. And this scorecard is a benchmarking tool that helps institutions measure their progress against regional and global averages. And separately, the survey data is aggregated by region and is entered into a global database, which is publicly available. This is the Women in Water database. It's now the largest database of its kind and has become a global benchmark mechanism for gender in water institutions. This database was revised last year and now has a data set from 164 utilities spanning 45 countries, and it is constantly growing. It is now also available in Spanish and French. It contains new interactive features and categories and is designed to be accessible for persons with disabilities. We already saw in the previous presentation, but just briefly, like, what do we know about water jobs? I'll cover a few of the areas just very briefly. But we invite you to explore the database in your own time and see the indicators that might be of relevance to you. So as we know, and as we've seen, and also the poll showed that we're actually all aware that women are underrepresented in the sector, and that for every 5 employees, there's only 1 female. And this is the same for engineers and managers. And although averages vary by region and even within countries, the fact is that the sector has a long way to go before gender parity is reached. So if we take a closer look at the share of engineers, yes, so only 1 in every 5 engineers in the water utility is women, but we really see very stark differences between the regions. So you can see here that the regional average of East Asia and Pacific, or the Middle East and North Africa, is either around the global average or below, while Europe and Central Asia has the highest regional average. The value of knowing data points such as this one on the share of female engineers is that it allows the utility management to use this data to set more realistic targets suited for their specific context. So what we've heard is that many utilities say that they actually have a relatively good representation of female employees. And I think Leticia's slide showed that quite well. But if you look actually closer and dig into like where these women are distributed, you find that they're often concentrated in administrative positions or in customer services, but are actually very much excluded from more technical occupations. And this then shows that there's occupational sex segregation going on, where women cluster around certain occupations, but more needs to be done to include them into the technical fields. And what we've also learned is that on average, female employees, especially female engineers, leave utilities at a higher rate than men. And so what becomes apparent is that we need to focus on not only on hiring more women, but to focus on ensuring that they actually stay in their positions and grow in leadership roles. And the previous presentations showed that very clearly. So as we've seen, data is very valuable in diagnosing where the barriers in a given water institution are, and also in identifying areas to advance gender inclusion. And the good news is that anybody interested in contributing to expanding the public good on data can. We welcome everybody to join in this data collection effort and in encouraging water institutions to provide HR data. So this can include public and private utilities or other service providers, but as I was saying, also water resource management institutions and agencies. We do, however, focus only on low and middle income countries. So why would a water institution join, or how to incentivize them to join? There are actually many benefits to undertaking a diagnosis, because it allows institutions to establish a baseline. They're able to benchmark against other organizations in the region and globally, and it can help inform business decisions and strategic action plans. If the survey is repeated, which actually a lot of the utilities we work with are doing, it allows for the monitoring of progress over time. So yes, collecting data is typically the first step to identifying the gender gap, but then to develop strategies for gender actions and to actually implement change, we have developed a range of tools and didactic material. And these resources are all available on our website. So for example, we have a free online self-paced course that can be taken by utility managers or anybody interested in learning how to identify barriers that women face in the sector, either overall for general information, but also it's tailored specifically to identify in your own utility that you work on. And it helps identify, based on specific barriers that exist in the utility, to identify what approaches and tools can be adopted to make changes. And we also have lots of videos, blogs, series of case studies that showcase some best practices that can also help. We heard just now from our colleagues at the Institute of Sustainable Futures at UTS about the database that we collaborated on, which has many, many rich activities on different areas on gender equality, disability, and social inclusion, from actual initiatives that exist around the world and what can be done to apply it to your own institution. So this takes us to the end of the presentation, and we invite you to see more on our website, to reach out to us by email if you want to learn more, whether it's to learn how to take part in the benchmarking, or even being part of Equal Aqua as a partner. We always welcome any institution interested in joining, and the more we are, the more we can achieve together. So yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. Super interesting. I think what really stuck was yeah, if women are leaving the sector, there are costs for employers because they have to hire again and retrain, blah, blah. So I think one is like, oh, the women leaving, it's kind of their fault. And yeah, there's costs involved. So I think this kind of like thinking to the argument of cost is really, really helpful by making the argument in a business perspective. Thank you so much. Very interesting. With that, I would like to re-invite all speakers to turn on the cameras to have a round of questions from the audience. Is there a question from someone who has listened and